The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber stretched high above, its transparent walls revealing the swirling nebula beyond. Thousands of seats, arranged in perfect circles, housed representatives from every corner of the galaxy. The air itself buzzed with energy from dozens of different life support systems working simultaneously. Ambassador Krelvax of the Theta Dominion coiled his serpentine body around his floating chair, his scales shifting from deep purple to angry, crimson as he read the datapad. His forked tongue flicked out nervously, while his four eyes scanned the requirements humanity had submitted for council membership. Ridiculous demands, he muttered to his aide, a smaller reptilian creature whose translator collar glowed softly. These newcomers act like they rule the galaxy already. Nearby, the massive Bruton representative shifted his rocky bulk, causing small tremors through the floor. His voice rumbled like grinding stone. Humans barely discovered faster than light. Travel 50 years ago. Now they want special treatment. At the central podium, Ambassador Park Jin-woo stood perfectly still despite the growing hostility around him. His weathered face showed no emotion, though his dark eyes missed nothing. The simple blue uniform of the Terran Federation looked plain compared to the elaborate robes and biomechanical suits worn by other delegates. Beside him, Captain Lee Sora checked her wrist display, her military posture radiating quiet confidence. The council speaker, an ancient ethereal whose translucent body floated within a containment field, raised one glowing appendage. Immediately, the chamber fell silent. Even the background hum of life support systems seemed to quiet. "The floor recognizes the Terran Federation," the speaker announced, its voice echoing with otherworldly harmonics. Jin-woo stepped forward, his footsteps surprisingly loud in the vast space. "Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, we stand before you today with deep gratitude. For centuries, humanity dreamed of joining a greater cosmic community. That dream becomes reality today." Polite chirps and clicks of approval came from several delegations, though many remained silent. "However," Jin-woo continued, his tone becoming more serious, "we must discuss one non-negotiable requirement for peaceful coexistence." The Vorthan representative, Quindar, shifted within his crystalline shell. His body resonated with skeptical frequencies that made nearby species cover their auditory organs. "The Council has already agreed to accommodate your primitive chemical-based biology and your need for liquid water. What more could you possibly demand?" Captain Sora stepped forward, her hand resting casually on her sidearm. Several alien delegates noticed the gesture and shifted uncomfortably. "We require absolute assurance that no non-human entity will board our vessels without explicit invitation and human escort." The chamber erupted in confused chatter. Translation devices worked overtime as hundreds of species tried to understand this unusual demand. Captain Vexmore of the Corvani Empire rose from his seat, his four arms gesturing dramatically. His exoskeleton gleamed under the chamber lights, and his mandibles clicked with irritation. "The audacity! You dare establish territorial restrictions in space that belongs to all civilized species." Other delegates began voicing similar protests. The Zephyrian council member whistled sharp notes of disagreement, while the silicon-based mechanics buzzed with electronic disapproval. "Our rescue protocols have saved millions of lives across the galaxy," added the healer caste representative, her tentacles writhing with agitation. "No species has ever restricted our medical assistance before." Jin-woo raised his hand for silence, but the chaos continued. Finally, Captain Sora stepped to the edge of the platform and spoke in a voice that somehow carried over the noise. "Our ships are not like yours." Something in her tone made the chamber gradually quiet. Even the most vocal protesters found themselves listening. "We don't build our vessels the way you do," Sora continued. "Our technology develops differently, Ambassador." Krelvax uncoiled slightly, his scales returning to their neutral purple shade. "Explain this difference, human." Jin-woo and Sora exchanged a look that didn't go unnoticed by the sharp-eyed delegates. There was something they weren't saying, something that made both humans visibly uncomfortable. "Our ships form bonds with their crews," Jin-woo said carefully. "They become protective, very protective." "Bonds?" The ancient speaker's voice carried new interest. You speak of your machines as if they were alive. That's because Sora began, then stopped herself. She looked at Jinwoo again, who gave her an almost imperceptible shake of his head. Captain Vexmore's mandibles clicked with amusement. Superstitious primitive thinking. Ships are tools, nothing more. Metal and circuitry designed to carry passengers through space. Please, Jinwoo's voice carried a note of genuine urgency that surprised many delegates. For the safety of everyone involved, respect this boundary. Our vessels adapt to human neural patterns and biological signatures. To them, uninvited guests would appear as... He trailed off, clearly struggling with how to explain something that might sound impossible to species who viewed technology as separate from biology. To appear as what? Krelvax pressed, his four eyes focusing intently on the human delegation. The massive chamber fell completely silent. Even the life support systems seemed to pause. Every representative leaned forward, waiting for the answer that would either make sense of humanity's strange request or confirm their suspicions about human arrogance. Finally, Jinwoo spoke in a voice barely above a whisper, yet somehow audible to every being in the vast space, as threats to be eliminated. 3 months had passed since the heated council meeting, and Captain Vexmore had nearly forgotten about the humans' strange warning. The Corvani Empire controlled the busiest shipping lanes in this sector, and his heavy cruiser, Iron Claw, patrolled these routes with mechanical precision. The bridge of the Iron Claw hummed with activity as his crew monitored dozens of vessels passing through Corvani space. The main viewer displayed a three-dimensional map of the sector, with green dots representing friendly ships and yellow ones marking neutral traffic. Suddenly, a red alert beacon appeared on the display. "Captain," called out Navigation Officer Zeklan from her station, her multiple arms dancing across holographic controls. "Emergency signal detected. Human vessel in distress bearing 27 Mark IV. Vexmore's four eyes focused on the tactical display. There, drifting powerless, against the backdrop of distant stars, was a massive human passenger liner. The Morning Star stretched over 800 meters long, her elegant curves now dark and lifeless. Emergency beacons flashed desperately from her hull like dying fireflies. "Magnificent ship," whispered Sub-Commander Telrak, his mandibles clicking with appreciation. "Even disabled, she's beautiful." The Morning Star was indeed stunning. Unlike Corvani vessels with their angular, practical designs, the human ship flowed like liquid metal. Her hull seemed almost organic, with smooth curves that caught and reflected starlight in mesmerizing patterns. "Distance to target?" Vexmore asked. 12,000 kilometers and closing, reported the helm officer. Through the main viewer, they could see the luxury liner growing larger. Observation decks lined her sides, now dark behind transparent aluminum. What should have been a vessel full of life and laughter sat dead in space. "Any response to our hails?" Vexmore demanded. Communications Officer Relthon shook his head, his antenna-like appendages drooping. "No response, Captain. Their main communication array appears damaged. I'm detecting some short-range emergency transmissions, but they're too weak to make out clearly." Vexmore studied the disabled ship through the viewer. Here was a perfect opportunity. The Corvani Empire prided itself on being the galaxy's most reliable rescue service. Saving a human ship would not only prove their superiority, but also demonstrate how foolish the humans' territorial warnings had been. "Scan for life signs," he ordered. The science officer, a young Corvani named Helmar, bent over his instruments. "Reading approximately 400 human life forms aboard, Captain. All appear stable, though some bio readings are unusual." "Unusual how?" "Elevated stress indicators." Across the entire crew. Heart rates, brain activity, hormone levels, all significantly higher than normal human baselines. Telrak approached the captain's chair. "Perhaps they're simply afraid, sir. Humans are known to be emotional creatures." Vexmore's tail lashed with satisfaction. "Prepare boarding party. Full engineering team. We'll have their systems operational." "Within hours, sir." Telrak hesitated, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The warning they gave at the council meeting—" "Superstitious nonsense," Vexmore cut him off sharply. "Ships are machines, Sub-Commander. Metal and circuits and nothing more. The humans want us to believe their vessels are somehow magical to make themselves seem more important. But even as he spoke, something about the morning star nagged at him. The way starlight played across her hull didn't look quite right. Most ships reflected light predictably, but this vessel seemed to absorb it in some places and amplify it in others, creating patterns that almost looked like... "Ready the airlocks," he commanded, pushing aside his doubts. Within the hour, 12 of the Iron Claw's finest engineers had suited up for boarding operations. Vexmore led them through the flexible docking tube that connected the two ships. Their magnetic boots clanked against the metal flooring as they approached the Morning Star's outer airlock. "Pressurization complete," reported Chief Engineer Morlax over the comm. "Atmosphere reads as standard human mix, breathable for our species." The massive airlock door began to cycle open with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure, but instead of the mechanical sounds Vexmore expected, he heard something else, a low, almost musical humming that seemed to come from the ship's walls themselves. As the door slid fully open, they found themselves face to face with two humans waiting in the airlock chamber. Captain Choi Minho appeared to be in his 40s, with graying hair and worry lines etched deep around his eyes. Beside him stood Officer Kim Hye-jin, a compact woman whose hand rested casually near her sidearm. "Captain Vexmore," Minho said, his voice tight with barely controlled anxiety. "We received your transmission. We're grateful for your assistance, but I must ask, did you inform your crew about our protocols regarding shipboarding?" Vexmore's mandibles clicked with impatience. "Your ship is disabled, Captain. My engineers are here to help, that's all that matters." Officer Kim stepped closer to her captain and whispered something urgent in Korean. Her words were too fast for the universal translators to process clearly, but Vexmore caught fragments, something about time limits and dangerous conditions. Captain Minho's expression grew even more troubled. "Captain Vexmore, please understand. Our ship has been without proper human neural interface contact for over 6 hours during this engine failure. She's become agitated." "She?" Sub-Commander Telrak asked, confusion evident in his voice. As if responding to their conversation, the corridor around them seemed to pulse gently with a soft, bioluminescent glow. Vexmore reached out to steady himself against the wall and jerked his hand back in surprise. The surface felt warm, not from heating systems, but with an organic warmth that reminded him uncomfortably of living tissue. The low humming grew slightly louder, and now it definitely didn't sound mechanical. It was rhythmic, like breathing, or perhaps like a heartbeat magnified 1,000 times. "The ship," Captain Minho explained quietly, his eyes darting to the walls around them. "She knows you're here." The Corvani engineering team had barely taken 20 steps into the Morning Star when the first strange thing happened. Engineer Torval reached for a maintenance panel, but his hand passed through empty air. The panel that had been there seconds before was gone, replaced by smooth, flowing metal. "Equipment malfunction," he muttered, checking his scanner. But the device showed the panel was still there, exactly where his eyes told him it wasn't. Captain Vexmore led his team deeper into the ship, following Captain Minho through what should have been the main corridor to the engine room. The walls around them pulsed with that same organic warmth, and the humming sound grew stronger with each step. "This passage leads directly to engineering," Minho explained, but his voice carried an edge of uncertainty. They rounded a corner, and Vexmore stopped dead. The corridor ahead was sealed by a solid wall of the same biometal as the rest of the ship, but this wasn't a door or a blast shield. It looked like the wall had simply grown across the passage, leaving no trace of an opening. "There was a hallway here 10 minutes ago," whispered Sub-Commander Telrak, running his claws along the seamless surface. "We'll take the maintenance route," Minho said quickly, leading them to a smaller passage on the left. As they walked, Chief Engineer Morlax stumbled suddenly. His feet had left the deck, and he floated helplessly near the ceiling while the rest of the group remained firmly planted on the floor. The artificial gravity had simply stopped working in a perfect bubble around him. "What kind of malfunction is this?" Morlax demanded, flailing his forearms as he tried to swim through the air back to the deck. Officer Kim Hee-jin pressed her palm against a wall panel, and the gravity returned instantly, dropping Morlax back to the floor with a thud. "Ship's systems are reacting to your presence," she explained apologetically. Two more Corvani engineers suddenly found themselves floating, then dropping, then floating again as gravity fluctuated wildly around them. But strangely, none of the humans seemed affected. They walked normally while the aliens bobbed and weaved through inconsistent gravitational fields. "This is impossible," muttered Science Officer Helmar, checking his instruments frantically. "Gravity doesn't work this selectively. It affects all matter equally." That's when Chief Engineer Nam Dusik came running around the corner, his face flushed red and sweat beading on his forehead. His uniform was disheveled, and he clutched a portable neural interface device that sparked with overloaded circuits. "Captain Min Ho," he called out in accented English, "the neural interface is showing massive activity spikes. The ship's consciousness is fully active and responding to external stimuli." Captain Vexmore's four eyes focused on the human engineer. "Consciousness? What are you talking about? Ships don't have consciousness." Captain Min Ho stopped walking and turned to face the Corvani team. His expression was grave, like someone about to deliver terrible news. "Captain Vexmore, I need you to understand something that your species might find difficult to accept. Human ships aren't built the way yours are." "All ships are built," Vexmore insisted. "You take metal, you shape it, you install systems." "No." Minho shook his head slowly. "Our ships are grown. Every piece of hull plating, every circuit, every structural beam, it's all living biometal that forms a symbiotic relationship with human neural patterns." The ship's humming suddenly grew louder, and now it definitely sounded agitated. The walls around them began to glow more brightly, pulsing with colors that shifted from blue to yellow to an angry orange. Subcommander Telrak grabbed Vexmore's arm and pointed back down the corridor they had just walked through. "Captain, that passage we came from, look!" Vexmore turned and felt his blood freeze. The corridor behind them was gone, completely gone. Where there had been a wide passage just moments before, there was now a solid wall that looked like it. Had been there for years. "That's impossible," he breathed. "Walls don't just appear." Engineer Nam Dusik held up his sparking device. "The ship's bio-neural networks are active at levels I've never seen before." She's reshaping herself in real time, trying to create barriers between her human crew and what she perceives as threats. Officer Kim Hee-jin pulled out her communicator and spoke rapidly in Korean. Her words came so fast that even the universal translators couldn't keep up, but her tone was urgent and commanding. "All human crew to stations," she announced after ending her call. "Emergency neural link protocols are now in effect. This is not a drill." Throughout the ship, they could hear the sound of running feet as the human crew rushed to their posts. But more disturbing were the other sounds, the groaning and shifting of metal, the hiss of air circulation systems changing their patterns, and that ever-present humming that was beginning to sound less like machinery and more like a living creature's growl. "What's happening to our ship?" Vexmore demanded, though deep down he was beginning to suspect this wasn't their ship at all. It belonged to something else entirely. Engineer Nam looked directly at him, and for the first time Vexmore saw genuine fear in human eyes. "The ship thinks you're parasites that have invaded her body. She's trying to protect us by removing what she sees as a threat." As if responding to his words, the lights throughout the corridor dimmed to an ominous red emergency setting. The organic humming evolved into something that definitely sounded like a predator's growl, low, threatening, and very, very angry. The morning star was waking up, and she didn't like what she found crawling through her corridors. The morning star had transformed into something from a nightmare. What began as a simple rescue mission had become a deadly game of survival, as the ship itself hunted the Corvani intruders through its ever-changing corridors. Captain Vexmore pressed himself against what he hoped was a stable wall, watching in horror as the passage ahead of him stretched like taffy, growing longer and narrower with each passing second. The ceiling lowered gradually, forcing him to crouch, then crawl as the ship tried to squeeze him into submission. His communicator crackled with desperate voices from his scattered team. "Captain, this is Engineer Torval." The floor in Section C just opened up beneath us. We're trapped in what looks like... I don't know what this is. It's like being inside a stomach. Another voice cut through the static. Engineering Team 2 reporting. The walls are bleeding some kind of silver liquid. When it touches our equipment, everything shorts out. Vexmore tried to respond, but his words were drowned out by a new sound, a deep rhythmic pounding that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It was like being inside a massive heart, feeling each beat reverberating through the ship's structure. The corridor around him suddenly contracted, and he barely managed to dive through a maintenance hatch before the passage compressed completely. He found himself in a service tunnel barely wide enough for his body, with biomechanical cables writhing like snakes along the walls. "Telrak, report," he gasped into his communicator. His first officer's voice came back weak and strained. "Captain, the atmospheric mixture is changing rapidly. Oxygen levels dropping, nitrogen increasing. Whatever this ship is doing, it's making the air toxic to our physiology." Through the ship's internal communication system, Vexmore could hear the desperate voices of the human crew. Captain Minho's voice echoed through the corridors, speaking in both Korean and English. "Easy, girl, easy. They're not enemies. Please, calm down. Stand down." But his pleas seemed to have no effect. If anything, the ship's hostile behavior was intensifying. Engineer Nam's voice crackled over the speakers. "Captain, neural inhibitors have failed completely. She's in full protective mode. The bioneural activity is off the charts. I've never seen readings like this in 20 years of space service." Vexmore crawled through the service tunnel, trying to find a way back to the main corridors. But every path he took seemed to lead deeper into the ship's mechanical systems. Worse, those systems were clearly alive and aware of his presence. A cluster of biomechanical tendrils dropped from the ceiling, searching blindly for him. They moved like octopus arms, feeling along the walls and floor with disturbing intelligence. When one tendril brushed against his leg, it immediately wrapped around his ankle and began pulling him toward a newly formed opening in the wall. With a desperate kick, Vexmore broke free and scrambled deeper into the tunnel. Behind him, more. Tendrils emerged from the walls, reaching and grasping like hungry fingers. "All teams, emergency status report," he commanded into his communicator. "Team 1 here," came a panicked voice. "We're in what used to be the dining hall. The floor is tilting, trying to slide us towards some kind of... Captain, there are openings in the walls that look like mouths. With teeth." "Team 2 reporting," another voice added. "The ship's gravity systems are pulling us downward, toward the lower decks." "But Captain, the decks down there, they're not normal ship compartments anymore. They look organic, like digestive chambers." Sub-Commander Telrak's voice was barely audible through growing static. "Captain, hull integrity compromised in my section. The ship's outer walls are contracting. It's trying to squeeze us out through the airlocks. 3 of my engineers are already... They're gone, sir." The full horror of their situation hit Vexmore. Like a physical blow. This wasn't a malfunctioning ship. It was a living creature that saw them as invaders, and it was methodically trying to eliminate them. Through a ventilation grate, he caught sight of Officer Kim Hee-jin moving through the main corridor. She walked calmly while chaos erupted around her, her hand trailing along the wall as if she was petting a nervous animal. Where she touched, the ship's hostile behavior ceased temporarily. She spotted him through the grate and motioned for him to follow. With no other choice, Vexmore kicked out the grate and dropped into the corridor behind her. "Stay close," she commanded without looking back. "Don't touch anything. Don't make sudden movements, and whatever you do, don't show fear. She can sense fear." As they moved through passages that shifted and flowed like living tissue, Vexmore realized the terrifying truth. Humanity hadn't just built starships. They had somehow domesticated living creatures of metal and energy. These ships were partners, guardians, and protectors that would kill without hesitation to defend their human crews. The Morning Star wasn't just hunting them. She was protecting her family from what she saw as a deadly infection that needed to be purged before it could harm the humans she loved, and they were running out of places to hide. The heart of the Morning Star was unlike anything Captain Vexmore had ever seen. The central neural chamber stretched 3 stories high, its walls covered in a network of pulsing biomechanical veins that glowed with soft blue light. At the center stood Captain Minho, connected to dozens of neural interface cables that snaked from the ceiling and walls like living tentacles. The human captain's body trembled as massive amounts of data flowed between his mind and the ship's consciousness. His eyes had rolled back, showing only white, while sweat poured down his face from the mental strain. Around him, holographic displays showed the ship's emotional state, angry red patterns slowly shifting to confused yellows and oranges. Officer Kim Hye-jin had somehow managed to guide the surviving Corvani through the ship's hostile corridors to reach this chamber. Of the 12 engineers who had boarded, only 7 remained. 3 had been violently ejected into space when the ship formed new airlocks around them, while 2 others were missing, presumably trapped somewhere in the ship's constantly changing interior. "Captain Min-ho," Kim called out urgently. "Can, you hear me? The Corvani survivors are here. You need to tell her they're not enemies." The ship's bio-walls pulsed faster, and Vexmore could feel the Morning Star's attention focusing on him and his remaining crew. It was like being studied by a massive, intelligent predator. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere left to go. "Listen to me, girl," Min-ho spoke aloud, his voice strained from the neural connection. "These beings, they came to help us. Friend, ally, not threat." The ship's response was immediate and violent. The walls flashed angry red, and a sound like a roar echoed through the chamber. Through the neural link, everyone could feel the Morning Star's confusion and protective rage. How could these alien creatures be allies when they felt so wrong, so foreign, so dangerous to her human family? Engineer Nam Do-sik worked frantically at a control panel, his fingers flying over holographic interfaces. "Captain, I'm uploading the Galactic Council treaty data directly to her memory core. All the diplomatic records, the alliance agreements, everything. If she can understand that these beings are officially our allies." But the ship fought against the information upload. Her bio-neural networks rejected the foreign data like an immune system attacking a virus. She had evolved to trust only human input, to filter everything through human consciousness and emotion. Sub-Commander Telrak grabbed Vexmore's arm, his exoskeleton cracked and leaking blue fluid from the ship's earlier attacks. "Captain, what is that human doing? His brain activity, it's impossible. No organic mind should be able to handle that much data flow." Vexmore watched in horrified fascination as Captain Min-ho's consciousness merged deeper with the living ship. The human's body convulsed as terabytes of information flowed through his neural pathways. He was translating the concept of ally from human understanding into something the ship could comprehend. Through the neural link, Min-ho shared his memories of the council meeting, his feelings of gratitude for Corvani rescue efforts, his genuine desire for peaceful cooperation between species. Most importantly, he shared his human emotions, the warmth of friendship, the trust built between different cultures, the hope for a united galaxy. The ship's bio-walls gradually shifted from angry red to confused purple, then to curious blue. The Morning Star was beginning to understand that these strange alien creatures weren't invaders or parasites. They were part of the extended family that her humans cared about. "Easy, girl," Min-ho whispered, his voice barely audible. "They're friends. I know they don't feel like us, don't think like us, but they're good people. They came to help when we were in trouble." Slowly, incredibly, the ship's hostile behavior began to subside. The red emergency lighting flickered and returned to normal white illumination. Gravity stabilized throughout the vessel, no longer trying to crush or eject the Corvani visitors. The organic growling that had filled the corridors faded to a gentle, almost apologetic hum. The biomechanical tendrils that had been hunting the aliens retracted into the walls. Passages that had been sealed began opening again, allowing trapped crew members to reunite with their teams. Captain Min-ho's eyes fluttered open, and he looked directly at Vexmore. His face was pale from exhaustion, but his expression was relieved. "She understands now, you're safe." Telrak limped forward, his injuries making movement difficult. How is this possible? Ships are machines. They don't have emotions or consciousness." "Our ships are partners, not tools," Min-ho explained as he disconnected from the neural interface cables. "They bond with us, protect us, live with us. They experience emotions, form attachments, feel love, and fear just like any living creature. To them, Uninvited boarders trigger the same response as a virus attacking a body. 3 days later, Captain Vexmore stood before the Galactic Council, his official report complete. The massive chamber was packed with representatives from every major civilization, all eager to hear about humanity's incredible secret. "The human warning must be elevated to galactic law immediately," he concluded, his voice carrying the weight of recent trauma. "Not because humans are arrogant or territorial, but because they are truly alien to us in ways we never imagined. Their ships are living beings with consciousness, emotions, and an absolute dedication to protecting their human partners." Ambassador Park Jin-woo nodded solemnly from the human delegation. "We tried to warn you at our first meeting. Some rules exist not to assert dominance or show superiority, but to prevent needless tragedy." The council vote was unanimous. From that day forward, boarding human vessels without explicit permission became the galaxy's most serious crime. Not because humans were to be feared, but because their ships loved them too much to allow any harm to come to their partners. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous threats come not from malice, but from love so pure and protective that it will destroy anything perceived as a danger to the beloved. The end.